Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Maricos with teachingrevolution.com, and today we have an exciting interview with Hugh Dellar on the business side of being a published ELT author. And I'm sure we're going to go in all kinds of different directions today. So I'll really let you take the lead on most of this stuff. But maybe you could just say a few words first for anyone who doesn't know who you are to introduce yourself.
Yeah, of course. So hi. No reason why you should know who I am. I'm Hugh Dellar. I'm a coursebook writer. I've written over 25 books so far. I've done 2 5 or 6 level general English series called Outcomes and Innovations, published by National Geographic Learning. I've also done a couple of books with Pearson, along with my co-author, Andrew Walkley, called Roadmap. I've written a methodology book called Teaching Lexically. I've been teaching almost 30 years now, and I'm currently running an online language school and tutor development center called Lexical Lab.
So lots of experience and
busy,
lots of insights to share. You've been busy, definitely. So okay, let's the first topic that I'd like to discuss is just authorship as a career path, and someone who wanted to go in the direction that you've gone, what should they expect if they're just getting started?
Pain and misery would be my general feeling. I think the industry's changed massively, even since I came into it. And I think I was probably lucky enough to be one of the last waves of people to come into ELT writing and basically be able to make some kind of living out of it. I think the generation that preceded me, those who did well and who had like 5, 6 level series of course books out, made a very decent living. I came in just as royalties was starting to be questioned. And for those of you out there who don't know about the royalty system, it's basically a kind of percentage on every sale that you get for your book. Over the years, royalties have been squeezed and squeezed, and the authors themselves have been squeezed and squeezed. And I think there's far less emphasis on writers as creatives or writers as people who come up with ideas and drive course books. Instead, there's an emphasis on content creators and sort of template-driven material and flat fees. So I think it's very, very difficult to break into the industry these days through the traditional routes of going through a major mainstream publisher and expecting to earn anything like a living wage. I think it's very, very rare. I mean, even among people who've been doing it a long time, it's harder for us to sustain as a lifestyle or as a income choice, much harder to do than it used to be.
Wow.
So yeah, sorry, fairly bleak answer to your first question.
No, it's great. It's good because I think someone should be prepared when they go down that road, right? But do you find it highly competitive still?
Yeah, massively. Highly competitive, particularly in terms of there'll always be someone else who'll do the work cheaper than you will do. Okay, so I think there's a kind of race to the bottom. I think on the one hand, there's a kind of older generation of writers who still tend to get some work because we've got proven track records. You know, there's a kind of understanding that if you've written a course book series before, you know the drill, you know how to write to a brief, you know how to deliver the material on time, you know how to draft, redraft, etc. At the same time, there are people who will come in and work for a third of what you yourself might want to be working for, and their work will be modified and polished by a series editor, and it will be sort of squeezed into a particular kind of template, and they'll be, you know, paid whatever they ask for. So yeah, it is still very competitive.
So where would you say being a successful writer who has a proven track record overlaps with like the academic study of English as a foreign language and English as a second language?
It's quite an interesting question. I'm not sure it necessarily does or necessarily has to.
Okay.
I think a lot of the most perceptive comments on course books and on publishing actually come from people outside of the industry, maybe people who are more steeped in a more academic tradition. I mean, I know for myself, I finished my master's degree in TESOL in 2000, and I
Hmm.
made a very conscious choice to go down a more commercial route with my writing rather than to pursue a career in academia.
Hmm.
Um, and, you know, I'm very glad I did personally.
Do you get a lot of slack from academics for this decision or this approach?
No, I think that there's almost like there's two separate worlds almost, you know, but the world of academia a lot of the time ends up talking to itself. And I don't think there are that many people left in English language teaching who have positioned themselves as mediators between the kind of higher ivory tower end of academia and the chalk
Hmm.
face where classroom practitioners exist. You know, and I think one of the things I've always been interested in as a teacher trainer is very much trying to sort of mediate what I've learned from the academic study of English as a foreign language or English language teaching and everyday classroom practice. Because where I'm interested in theory is, well, how does that help inform what I do as a teacher in a classroom? And so I think, you know, there's still space there. I think there's definitely space for anyone who's interested in moving into teacher training, teacher development to act as a sort of intermediary or a go-between between those two worlds, because I don't think the world up there has done a particularly great job of talking with rather than down to the world that most classroom practitioners operate in.
Who do you see in the ivory tower, if we could put it that way? Like, if someone asked me, I'd probably mention Cambridge University Press. I'd probably mention ETS in the United States, the controlling the leveling system and the teacher qualification system. Who do you see
Yeah, I
up
mean,
there?
I would say definitely those people. I think there's also things like there's a lot of journals. So, you know, the most accessible journal is something like the English Language Teaching Journal, but even that is quite removed, remote, and not necessarily immediately applicable to most classroom teachers. Beyond that, you've got
Mhm.
things like the Applied Linguistics Journal, which is, you know, way over the head of certainly where I was in the first 10 years of my teaching, you know, and I think over the heads of where a lot of people are. I think just generally there's that sort of strand of when you start doing an MA in TESOL, you get this reading list of obscure articles from sociolinguistics journals and, you know, sort of quite meaty, heavy duty books on various aspects of language teaching and language learning, which may be interesting, but it's not always obvious to see the classroom applicability of them. I think
Mhm.
there are people like, I don't know if you know him, there's a guy called Russ Main who does a thing called evidence-based ELT.
Oh
And
wow.
he's been doing a really interesting job of trying to look at the research that's out there about English language teaching in particular and think about how that applies to what we do in the classroom. So that there are people out there who are sort of, in a way, a bit like what John Hattie tried to do, I think, despite the flawed research, with his kind of meta study of the meta studies for this visible learning thing, which was much
Mhm.
more about kind of what's effective in terms of general classroom practice across disciplines. But I think we maybe haven't had enough of that in English language teaching, of people looking at, you know, let's take all of the studies that have been done about what makes an effective listener in a foreign language, and let's take from that 4 or 5 things that are really, really useful. Don't think there's been enough of that done yet still. So, you know, there's still space there. I think a lot of academia is still pitched to, you know, elite academic conferences
Mhm. Mhm.
and
So you
papers.
had mentioned before that your books are published through National Geographic
Yeah,
Learning,
predominantly,
and
predominantly.
um, and so I'm sure why didn't you work with, for example, Oxford University Press, Cambridge University Press, or someone like that?
Yeah. So, well, originally we turned down Oxford because they were interested in us as writers, but didn't believe in the project that we'd pitched to them. and wanted us to work on a project that they were trying to pitch to us. And at that point, we were sort of young and arrogant enough to be confident about rejecting them. You know, we did have that brief moment after walking away from the first meeting where we were like, maybe no one else is ever going to ask us to write a book again, and maybe we've blown it. We then started out with a small independent English-based publisher called Language Teaching Publications, LTP. And they sold up in the very early 2000s, and they sold up to what was then Hindley Cengage. And so we went as part of the furniture, part of the package, to Hindley Cengage, who became Thompson Hindley, who eventually, you know, became National Geographic Learning. And I think actually working with an American company has been a bit of a godsend, because they operate differently, they think differently. I'm not sure if it's just that they're better capitalists or they're less restricted by the class system or whatever, but they seem more open to having ideas pitched to them and to consider the merit of a particular idea before making a decision on it. Whereas I think the British companies seem very much, we know best, we'll tell you what's needed, here's what we're telling you the market wants, write this. So it's been good for us working with American publishers and an American corporation.
That's great. So you wouldn't change it if you could go back in time?
No. I mean, we've had opportunities to work with other publishers over the years and had meetings and things. And, you know, we did end up doing 2 books with Pearson, but I would say my experience of working with Nat Geo has been far superior. It's far more quality. There's more respect, I find, for what we bring as the creatives, you know, at the risk of sounding pompous, to the table. There's a bit more respect for your creativity and your experience and your ideas, and a bit more enthusiasm for allowing the writers to drive the project a bit more. So we've just been given a bit more freedom and a bit more respect, which is, you know, as a writer, that's what you want: bit of freedom, bit of respect.
Yeah, definitely. So I know that we started out by looking at kind of the prospects of going down the same path that you've gone down. And you said that it looks bleak, but I think that a lot of people who are familiar with your writing and your published book series, that they would like to do something similar. And maybe the first question wasn't right, because you know, going back into the past in order to follow that path isn't right? So today, what would you see as like a new person's way in, or like a shortcut that you, having all of your experience, would you know, tell someone about if they said they wanted to do that?
If you've got ideas and you've got talent and you want to write, or you've got ideas about material you're wanting to produce, you've really got one of 2 options. One is to kind of hawk those around the publishers in the hope that maybe they might pick you up and get you to write a teacher's book for an $8,000 flat fee, or they might get you on a team of people churning out content for their online platforms or whatever. Or you go down the self-employed route. And I think what a lot of people are doing increasingly, and I first noticed this happening maybe 10 years ago in a more economically competitive market, such as Brazil and Russia. What a lot of smart young teachers are doing is understanding the power of technology in a way that I think generally the big publishers still haven't really. And they're using the platforms that are available out there to sell stuff that they're producing themselves. And I mean, you've already seen in Brazil in the last couple of years, the first kind of, you know, Instagram driven, you know, close to being millionaires who are pushing courses that they've just learned how to market very cleverly. You know, and the content's variable a lot of the time with those things. Some of it's not content that I would have wished to have put my name to. But I think if you're younger and you're more tech savvy, that's the way I would say go. And, you know, I'm still learning myself, and I look at some of the younger teachers I know and I see how they're using social media to push what they're doing. And often what they're doing is great, and they're really good at pushing it themselves as well. So I would say I shouldn't be saying this because this is space that I need to be pushing myself into more. But I think that's what I would do. I don't think you can rely on the big traditional companies to remunerate talent or develop talent to the degree that it needs to if it's going to really foster and keep that talent happy. Yeah, so
Yeah.
go your own way. Go your own way. And if all else fails, you can still go back in 10 years' time and hawk your work around and get given a teacher's book for $8,000. That's not going to go away, that.
Because anyone who's able to do that work, they'll basically take you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think, there's always going to be a market for fresh blood that's willing to enter at absolute kind of basic level and do the donkey work that needs doing to produce the product that the international publishers need to keep the wheels rolling.
Yeah, and that could be a door in for someone to create.
It could be, brand. And I know people that have gone through those doors and ended up writing course books, but I also know lots of people who've gone through those doors and found themselves locked in the lower basement for the next 10 years, churning out workbook exercises for a flat fee. So it can cut both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
But I think if you're young and tech savvy,
why not, right?
Go your own way. You don't know until you try.
So people who wanted to do that, what do you see as kind of professional skills that they should develop in order to set them apart from just other teachers who are not authors?
So I think you need to be clear about what the value of what you're selling is, okay, or what you're offering as a writer or as a producer of educational material is. What principles underpin what you're doing? What's your material trying to achieve, and who do you think it's suitable for? What gap is out there in the market that you feel is not being provided for? And how does what you're trying to offer people differ from what's out there? And there are infinite little niches. It could be that you become the guy who specializes in producing English for university degree courses that do biochemistry, chemistry, biology, and physics in English. And I've got some friends in Poland at the University of Łódź who have recently done an open source course book, which is based on courses they've been running at the University of Łódź, specializing in hard sciences and English. So,
Wow.
there's that kind of thing. Or it may be that, there's a guy called Kieran Donachie in Spain who does English based on film clips. And so he worked out very early on that there wasn't anybody regularly producing material based on contemporary popular films that you could get little snippets of and use for free on the internet, and he filled that gap. So I think it's just, what's your niche, what's your gap, what makes you different in terms of what you're offering. If what you're offering is, I've got a couple of great exercises on the present perfect, well, good luck with that. It's not enough. It's not enough.
Definitely.
So,
the big topic that everybody, Sorry,
I think own your principles. Be clear about what your principles are and own them and be proud of them and wear them on your sleeve.
Great. So, a big question that everyone's talking about today is how things are going to change after this virus, coronavirus, COVID. It's a shame to have to bring it up.
You're optimistic that there's going to be an after.
Right. Well, maybe a year or two from now, but
God, let's hope so. Yeah, I think there's obviously going to be a lot of changes.
Yeah, what do you think will be the biggest changes in the industry because of this, and maybe specifically about being an author and these kinds of
I
projects?
think a lot more people are going to have worked out that they quite like working from home, they quite like delivering digitally, and they quite like the freedom that this year has given them in some ways. But I think one of the things that the COVID crisis has done is it's kind of laid bare some of the underlying mechanisms which exist within society. And it can be just basic things like in the UK, we've got black and minority ethnic people dying at higher rates because of systemic racism that puts them in frontline positions where they're more exposed to the virus. So on a basic social level, you see things like that happening. You also see things like people who are suddenly forced by their private language schools to go online. They're teaching 15 kids an hour who are all paying £15 each, and the teacher themselves is getting £15 an hour while the school is raking in £220 without any overheads. And I think there are people sort of looking at that thinking, wait a minute, you know,
Yeah.
this doesn't look right to me. And so I think it's been an eye-opener for a lot of people in that kind of respect. So I think there's definitely going to be a drift towards greater digital delivery of education, both face-to-face, and I think you're also going to see these kind of, you know, vast, well, you're already seeing it, these vast kind of Uber-like platforms which are, you know, delivering minimum viable kind of content to people in a very pre-packaged, sort of relatively dehumanized but cheap way. Right. There's going to be a lot more of that kind of thing as well. At the same time, I think the old publishers won't die yet because, you know, that there's still going to be a huge market for. I think you will see also a kind of enthusiastic return to face-to-face. You know, it's like for all of us, it's like, how long has it been since you've been able just to go and sit in a bar with your friends and give people a hug and just do normal kind of things that we all used to do. So I think that, you know, that there will still be language schools, there will still be face-to-face classes, there will still be state school systems which require product. But I think maybe the traditional publishers will retreat into a more entrenched conservative control of a certain section of the market, like state schools and state exams and big institutions, and there'll be a lot more innovation around the edges, which leaves space for people.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is space for up and comers to compete, even with these giant companies moving online.
Yeah, I think so. You know, it's just, you've got to offer something different. I think if you play that kind of race to the bottom price wise, well, you're going to lose that, because there'll be someone else in the Philippines who'll do that lesson for $3. You know, and probably decently, but you've got to have some angle. It can't just be price, and it can't just be nativeness anymore. I think both of those things, there's going to be so much competition out there, but there's definitely going to be space as well. And, you know, I know people who've moved online in the last 3-4 years who are doing well out of it and making a decent living and thriving in that space. But, you know, as you probably know yourself, it's a lot of hard work and a lot of graft to keep things moving and to push your profile out there.
Yeah. But it's worth it, I think, right?
Hey, you know, I'm still here.
That's great. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on here and taking the time to do this. It was really great to talk to you. And I think that a lot of people who watch this later are going to see that these insights have been really valuable that you've shared with us.
I hope so. And, you know, feel free to get in touch with me. It's hugh@lexicallab.com, HUGH. Yeah, if anyone's got questions or anything they wanna ping over to me, always happy to hear from people.
Yeah, we'll add the email address and the link over to the website under the video.
Thank you.
So everyone will be able to find it.
Very kind of you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks for touching base, and good luck. Yeah.
You too. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Yeah.